Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the honor and privilege of having Tim McKay with Vista Consulting, who is, in my opinion, a genius when it comes to law office management and the numbers. And Tim, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Ken. And I think you guys know Ken sometimes exaggerates. Genius is a stretch, but
I'm serious.
I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Yeah. So tell us how you started, because I know you're a CPA. Tell me how you got started in consulting with law firms, and more specifically, I think you do mostly personal injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. We're 99% plaintiff, for sure plaintiff, and I'd say 99% of that is personal injury. But there are some other things that are out there. We've been involved with some employment things and that kind of deal, but certainly it's all plaintiff. But got started. First of all, you're right. I'm an accountant and became a CPA in 1983. Worked for Deloitte. It was Deloitte, Haskins and Sells back then, and it was the big eight firms. Ken, you may be old enough to remember the big eight accounting firms. Now I call them the Final Four. They've all merged together, and now so I worked for one of them for a couple of years, and decided that the big firm wasn't for me, and took off with a couple of partners and practiced traditional accounting. And believe it or not, I was a tax guy for about 18 years. And I had a little bit of I called it a breakdown. My partner said I should call it an epiphany, that I felt like I was always behind the eight ball and not bringing a tremendous amount of value. And I went into her office. Her name's Sandy O'Brien. I love her to death. She asked me a question I'd never thought of, which was, what do you really like to do in this business? And what I thought about then was, I like it when people came to me with issues or wanted me to help them think through things. And it was reactive consulting work, and that I liked. And we decided to shift our practice and make a business out of that. And I use the term that we wanted now to help affect the score and not just keep the score, which is what most CPAs do. I'm not going to put everybody in the same bucket. I'm not going to paint with that large brush. But so we started working with some of our CPA firm business clients. I mean, we also escorted out a big chunk of our client base at that time, which were individual tax clients. And we made a tough decision. Well, actually, it wasn't that tough to help them find somewhere else to land, because we wanted to expand our work in the business area and help businesses become better. And one of the firms that drank that Kool-Aid happened to be a personal injury law firm. And we got real traction there. And that firm grew to a point, not just because of us, but I like to think we had some influence in that. They grew really big and fairly fast, and they needed a COO. And we helped them hire that person. That person happened to be Chad Dudley, who helped. And he was a little younger than me, and he came in and looked at what we were doing and said, hey, we can automate some of these things that you guys are tracking. And of course, he was also involved in looking at those reports and then helping us attack areas that need to be attacked and improve these firms. And Chad gave a talk at a seminar, and someone asked him, hey, can you help us? And Chad called and said, hey, do you want to go with me? And Vista was born. And word of mouth. So I could go on forever, but that's how we got started. And in 2018, I bought Chad out, and that's a long story, but it's bittersweet. We are not enemies. We are actually still very, very good friends. There was a business reason to do that from his side, and still love him to death. It's been good. So Vista's Vista now. We have 15 team members, and it's kind of amazing, really.
Yeah, and I know y'all do a lot of consulting. I know you also you got a new business now where you're helping law firms find staff and lawyers because it's become so hard.
Correct. We went into that simply because, our firms are having trouble getting people, and the people who we're working with, and we thought we kind of knew what they were looking for. And it's like anything else. If that's not your main business, their business is practicing law, not being a recruiting service. And we thought we could do that, and we employed a team and did some research, and now we're helping recruit. We're not headhunters. I want to make sure that that's out there. We don't hunt, we fish.
I got you. I got you.
That's a new service. So yeah.
Yeah. And also I know because we've worked together is in buying and selling law firms. And in fact, you're going to be one of my keynotes at the upcoming buying and selling law firms practices. It's going to be right after the summit down at New Orleans. You're going to be speaking 2 or 3 slots there. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm very excited. Thank you for having me. I think that we are hearing, because you and I happen to be in this space, we hear what's going on. There's a lot of talk about, combining and acquiring law firms out there. The ruling in Arizona where non-lawyer ownership. I don't know if that's necessarily what sparked it, but there's just a lot more talk. The transactions that I've actually been involved in have been lawyer to lawyer. I think eventually we're going to see entry into the marketplace of equity capital and that kind of thing. It's a little complicated because all the state rules and that kind of thing. There's a lot of dominoes that need to fall. I personally believe they will fall. It's just going to take some time. But yeah,
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a lot longer than people think.
No argument here, for sure.
But when you go in a law firm, if I remember correctly, you look at like 10 different things. I guess it's like a report card or whatever, or things you want to look at and kind of grade them out and what they need help with.
Correct. We think that these functional areas of law firms, intake, case management, human resources, the client relations, and I'm not going to name them all, accounting, do they have vision? I mean, we kind of evaluate firms in those areas, and then we call it looking at the good, bad, and the ugly. We don't want to spend time on things. There's not, by the way, there's not a Vista way to do things. We think every firm is individual. They're unique personalities, and we try to adapt ourselves to them. But we still look at those areas and what's functioning well. And we have certain metrics and things that we look at in those areas. We didn't come up with the term operational metrics, but we surely use it a lot. Our CPA background, we look at financials with metrics. That's kind of a natural thing, but operations have metrics also. How many calls did you get, or how many leads did you get? How many do you want? How many did you sign? Those type of things are important, we believe, in law firms. We can go through every one of those areas and try to come up with some objectiveness to it, if you will. There's still a lot of subjective, but we try to look at the objective first. Yeah.
Well, there's one thing I want to hit on today, and I talked to you about it before we started, is, I talk a lot about marketing. A lot of people want to talk about intake, and that is, I think, where the most leakage is in every law firm I've ever did consulting with is you can always improve intake. There's no doubt about it. Nobody's got it perfected. But financial healthiness of a law firm, I mean, how do you know, what do you go in and look at for a law firm? My question would be you, if I was a lawyer and I was asking you, what should my numbers be? What should my ratios be for me to be healthy? How much money should I have? How much income should I have set aside, or money? What does cash flow mean? I was looking at businesses for sale this last week around here, nothing to do with law. And every time the brokers, they had cash flow. Like, what does that mean? Most lawyers don't know what that means. How important is that? So, I've given you a lot of questions, but I'm laying it out there so you can kind of go in the matter and the order that you want to go.
Sure. Well, thank you. Yeah, very open-ended. And if I go too deep or you want me to go another direction, please interrupt me. But I'll go back to just looking at overall financial healthiness of law firms. I say there's an ultimate consulting answer, and that answer is it depends. Trying to compare apples to apples in just about any business is very difficult because businesses are in different stages of their life, and for example, law firms are in first they start off as a startup, and then they develop some systems and processes, and then they're in a turnaround phase, and then they may be in a realignment phase where they need to tweak some things, and then they're really hitting on all cylinders. We call that sustaining success, and what are they doing right? So to go in and try to compare statistics, and I'll hit the what statistics or ratios in just a second, in a startup firm to a firm that's been in business for 15, 20 years and has 35 plus team members is really apples and oranges. So the first thing that we try to do is when we go into firms, we start looking at the financial side, is to try to assure ourselves that they are getting good financial numbers. And financial numbers, and again, I don't want to try to make everybody here an accountant, is just, are they creating monthly a balance sheet and profit and loss statement for their firm? And then how are they categorizing those expense items in the profit and loss statement? In just about all plaintiff firms, there's three major expenses within those firms. There's attorney compensation, non-attorney compensation, and we've started calling this case acquisition costs. We used to call it marketing, but there's a lot more that goes into marketing and acquiring cases, because if you're buying leads, or if you're doing internal marketing, or if you're marketing and advertising through general media, billboards, radio, TV, those kind of things. But in any firm, it's those big three: attorney compensation, non-attorney compensation, and case acquisition cost. And then all of the other expenses, we actually, no matter what their financial statement looks like, we collapse it into a category we just call other. Okay.
Right.
And then we look at ratios of what is their revenue look like from whatever source, and then compare the ratios for those four big expense areas, attorney comp, non-attorney comp, case acquisition, and other. And we want to get a good feel that we are accurate, for lack of a better word, of looking at history with a particular firm. Okay, what do these ratios look like for that firm? Okay, we have what I would call a rule of thumb, a Vista rule of thumb, that if we had firms that, I'll say that firms that we see where owners are not producers within the firm, but they're managing the firm, they are usually at a 25 plus profit margin, 25% plus profit margin. And generally they're falling into 20 to 25% attorney compensation, 20% of revenue is non-attorney compensations, which is all the other team members, and roughly 20% in the marketing / case acquisition, and 10 to 15% in the all the other categories that fall in there. So if you were to go through, and I know I gave some ranges in there, but if you say that revenue is 100% and you look at, there's 20 to 25 in attorney comp, 20% in non-attorney, roughly 20 in marketing, and 10 to 12 or 10 to 15 in the other, what falls to the bottom line is roughly 25% or so. And so we first want to see where the firm is before we try to apply anything. But if we can go into a firm and we can look at that snapshot, if you will, of what their P&L has looked like over a period of time, and let's just say that their attorney compensation is 45% of their revenue, my knee jerk to that is that compensation is high relative to what we would like to see. So again, we're not about going in and cutting people's compensation. There's two sides to that ratio. There's the revenue that they're bringing in, and then what they're getting paid. So we're saying, okay, what are these people in your firm really doing? What are they producing? And, we have a method of looking at each individual attorney. We call it a profit center analysis. What does that attorney produce? What is he or her compensation? And what is the team that's associated with that person? What are their compensation? And then we look at every attorney and every team and say, okay, how does this fall out? Because you can still have a very good ratio, but you may have one attorney that's carrying the group, so you've got to look at things across that. And I know I might be getting a little bit deep here, but that's what we did. Look at, hey, where are your ratios? What can we do to help? The other service, Ken, too, that and again, this is not advertising for Vista at all, but we've developed a fractional CFO service, a part-time CFO service, because the other thing we've seen in law firms, generally they have a pretty good bookkeeper and they have an outside CPA, but they really don't have anyone that's, for lack of a better term, an expert in analysis. So we've developed a service to plug in for that too, where hey, you don't have to hire a $125,000 to $150,000 person to do that. We'll do that on a part-time basis, and economically it makes sense for some firms. And We always would like to have the team members in-house, and we're not, we say that we're true consultants. We're not subcontractors. We're not going to be there forever. We want to teach our clients how to do it, and then we're out. We want to maintain a relationship, but we're not there forever. But going back to what you asked about was the financial side of things. First, trying to get a comfortableness, if you will, that their numbers are accurate. And sometimes we find out that they're not. And I'm going to give one example that can really affect the profit and loss of a firm, and it's an accounting deal. We want to know how our clients or how the firms are handling their advanced case cost, the money that they're investing in their cases. Okay. There are some firms that deduct those costs. It hits their P&L. You would think, hey, that's an expense, right? It's an ordinary necessary expense, so it should hit the P&L. That's truly not the way it should be handled. It should be handled as an asset that you're actually loaning your client money. You're investing in their case, so it should show up on their balance sheet. What's the difference, Tim? Well, the difference is that if it shows up on your P&L and you're expensing these costs, then you could take a quick look at your profit and loss and say, we're not doing well at all. When you're doing really well, you're just investing money in cases that are going to come in later. Again, this is a little bit of a technicality, but that's a big one, because a lot of times people say we aren't making any money. Well, you're doing really good. You're just growing. You're investing that money in your cases, which are going to pay off later. Don't penalize your current operations with an expenditure that's going to pay off later. So I hope I explained that well.
Yeah. And really, I've seen this too, Tim, but it's really it's against IRS regulations. You cannot deduct it. I mean, if you do, you're actually, I guess, I don't even know if it's criminal, but I know it's penalties.
Yeah, it's not criminal. The IRS looks at it absolutely that way. And I don't, I always say I'm not on the IRS's side on this at all. I mean, you just have to, from a management standpoint, which is what we're always looking for.
Yeah.
From a management standpoint, in my opinion, you must look at it this way, because if not, you're going to get a distorted picture of your finances, and that can lead to bad decisions. I often say that the only thing worse than no information is wrong information, and basing decisions off of that. So you're right.
And I've encouraged all our PILMA members and all my mastermind members they've got all these services now that will extend the money out, because the way I look at it, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I'm having to take after tax dollars, you know what I'm saying, to invest. Whereas if I could take that money and put it in marketing and grow my business versus investing in the client's case, because the client's case is going to be worth what the client's case is worth, and why not they don't care. I mean, what I've found is they just don't care. And these services, they do it and they keep up with it, and the clients don't care. I mean,
when you say they don't care, what you're really saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is even if you charge back the interest as a client cost, it's generally a very nominal number, but it can mean a lot. Most states, there are some that won't allow that, but most states do allow, if the firm borrows money and then loans it to the client, that they can deduct that interest. And as you say, there are businesses out there that help track that, where their interest rates are a little higher. I call them mezzanine type lenders, and I could name 10 names that you and I would know. And I'm not look, I'm pro if that works for you and you need that. But also, if you can go and get a line of credit from your bank, and you have the accounting wherewithal to keep up with those things within your firm, then you can do it that way and still charge the interest back. And that's why I say, we can't make these blanket statements about, hey, your firm should do this, until we know about your firm. And again, I'm trying to give some very general metrics of how and the things you should look at. But it always comes down to this, in my opinion, Ken, is let's get the client's numbers. What are those ratios? And then let's improve them. If they're out of whack, like I said earlier on attorney compensation, that's just an example. What can we do to change that? Where can we pick up? We have to pick up the first point before we can pick up 10 points, right? What can we do to start affecting positively these ratios? It's funny thing, I always, I hear, hey, we're going to take the Twinkies out of the break room, to try to save cost. Well, that may save a little bit of money, but that's not going to move your dial as much as a percentage point on non-attorney comp or attorney comp, or even marketing expenses, and I'll take a swipe at marketing here for just a second. Some people confuse advertising and marketing, totally different things, right? Advertising, you're spending money to get a billboard or a TV or whatever it happens to be, but they will ignore their internal marketing. Going back to the clients that have come through their firm, was just telling them that we're here and reminding them that, hey, we hope you don't have that kind of, experience a negligent act like happened and you came through here. But if you have a cousin, a friend, a business associate that falls into that category, we're the guys. And a lot of times it's simply top of mind. And I'm going to say one other thing, and then I'll let you ask me another question, is that without fail, even the firms that are heavy into what I'll call advertising, they're spending a lot of money on billboards and TV, et cetera, their largest cases still come from referrals of people who have come through their firm. And
Absolutely.
To ignore those people, to me, is tragic.
It is. In one of the books I wrote, Under Promise, Over Deliver, I say there's before representation, during representation, and after representation. All lawyers do before, some do during, probably only half do after representation. They just forget it. They feel like, I don't know if it's their ego or laziness, they feel like that people are going to remember them, and they don't. They forget. I tell a story, I'm not going to tell it today because of time limitations. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I think you got to put a fence around them and stay top of mind awareness. This is so important. You just throw away so much money. Why throw away that money trying to get somebody to hire you that don't know you, and take somebody that knows you and trusts you and likes you? They get them just to nudge them to send their family and friends because they're going to be doing them a favor, not just you.
Absolutely. I mean, and quite honestly, it's usually less expensive than other types of advertising. When people ask us or Vista, do y'all help with marketing? I have to go deeper on that question, because we're not going to tell people, hey, go get billboards or radio or TV or whatever. We're just not going to do that. But I mean, we're generally operational people, but part of operations is the systems to reach back to those clients that have come through and how to do it and the touches. I'll name someone else who's a dear friend, Mckey Love, who I think the world of, is a consultant and just been around law firms, is bright. She has developed, or says, that you should touch those clients 7 times a year in some way, shape, or form. Well, if you're touching them 0, let's just start with 2. And now, Mckey, we'll get to 7, but let's work up to those things. So starting that, see, every journey starts with the first step. Let's start improving a little bit. And I think you can get there. You'll see growth.
I agree. So, one of our keynote speakers at the Super Summit, which is right before the buying and selling that you're going to be speaking at down in New Orleans in June, at the end of June, is I got Vern to come to one of our mastermind meetings one time down in Key West, because he was down there doing something in Marathon. He's got a place down there. And he drove down there, and one of the questions he asked every lawyer, and I just never heard it asked before, he said, take your gross revenue and take your number of employees and divide it. Tell me how much per employee. And Tim, the room went anywhere from 150,000 to 650,000. I've never seen, and I'm just wondering, I'm just asking you this, is that important?
I think it's important for every law firm to do it and then see how they can improve it. I don't have a plant my flag metric on that, because there are firms, Ken, who are high volume, lower value case firms, and then lower volume, higher value cases. So it's again, not an apples to apples comparison. What I always say is, let's get what it is for your firm, and then decide if that number is good for your firm or how we can improve it. Where do we think we're, my term for it's out of whack, that may be a Southern term. If you're not, the ratios just don't make sense, then we have to find ways to improve them. But I say start on the ratios that have the biggest impact. Every employee, because you're throwing your receptionist, and by the way, we call them the director of first impressions. Your receptionist is in there. There are people in your mailroom, things like that. So you've got some. If you look at every employee, we like to look at it as revenue per producer or producer team. Some firms have what we call pods, where they have the same paralegal or legal assistant working with an individual lawyer. Some people use more of an assembly line approach. They don't, each paralegal doesn't have a set lawyer. But in any event, you can look at the numbers such that you can get revenue per producer. That may mean attorney, or it may mean a team, and see who is actually pulling the weight of the firm. Now, there's a lot that can go in that too that cause anomalies or outliers. When a big case does come through, we tend to try to isolate those big cases and look at what I call the rank and file type cases. We believe in ranking cases as they come in, getting those higher value cases to the more seasoned, in most cases, attorneys and that kind of thing. Maybe I'm getting off of financial, but these all affect financial, right?
Yeah, they do. Like, it's funny. I have people ask me all the time, how much percentage should I spend on my marketing? And I always say, it really, like you say, it depends. I mean, are you in a growth mode, or are you in a hold mode, or you just, because I've had years where I just spent 5%, and I've had years where I spent 30%, and it depends on what mode I was in. Some years I was backing off and trying to get reorganized because I was growing so damn fast. I won't keep in my, what I'm saying? I had to reorganize because it was just going too fast. So I had to catch my breath. Sometimes you have to take a pause, and regroup.
You and I get the opportunity, thank goodness, to speak at different events and things like that. And it's tough sometimes to put these generalized statements out there. Your marketing should be X percent. That's why I think consulting is a one-on-one really type deal. And you can set things out there and talk about things in generalities and give people ideas. But if we're working with a firm, it's about your firm. It's not about the firm down the street. It's about this firm. What can we do to maximize here? That's why I say we never have a cookie cutter. We have some rules of thumbs. We have some things that we always look at, but it's always, okay, if your numbers are here, you obviously want them to be here. So what are the things we're going to do to move you toward a better ratio? And those things too, by the way, always involve doing more efficient and effective work for your client. Okay. The beauty about this plaintiff work is that your revenue is tied to how good a job you do for your clients. So what can we do to help you help your client most efficiently and effectively? Because that's going to also help you. Those are the things that I think sometimes we lose sight of when we just concentrate on that scoreboard. What's behind those numbers? What makes them work? And how can you improve them? And again, I get kind of fired about that. That's the cool stuff for me. There's really only, I say there's 4 ways to grow a law firm, but 2 of them are subsets. You've got to get more cases, and you've got to increase the value of the cases, are the big 2. There is no other way.
Yeah.
So, but if you get more cases without setting up a system to handle them, then people are going to come one time, and then they're never going to come back. So what does your client experience cycle look like? Are you making them happy? Are you getting them that opportunity to reach back and refer back to you? And do you measure those things? How many referrals do we get? Hey, we got 100 this year. What do we need to do to get 200 next year? That's what I mean by individualized, zeroing in on that firm.
Yeah. I got a firm that we're working with, and his big deal is he's doing the net promoter score for clients. He gets to get a read.
Yeah.
And so his goal is, it's sort of like you would do intakes. Right now he's probably around 55. He wants to get it to 80, which is tremendous, right? If you can get above 75, 80, you're killing it. That means you're like class A, Ritz-Carlton. I think I thought that was smart. That was very important to him. You know what I'm saying? And he spends a lot of money. He spends 7 figures on marketing, but he understands the importance of these past clients,
absolutely.
And so let me ask you this, and I guess it's still like that. When I was practicing, man, I'd have great months. I've had terrible months. It was like a roller coaster ride some years, especially when I was in the growth mode, because you had to put so much money up front. Then you got to wait for the cases. You don't want to sell them too quick. You got to mature them. You got to get them out. And then, like this pandemic, I mean, it's hard to get people to settle cases when they know you can't take them to court, right?
Right,
You
right.
lose your sword. What's the rule of thumb of how much you think people should have in reserve? Because, cash is so important.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this in two parts. One is I like to see 3 to 4 months of cash in reserve, but I like to see one hell of a line of credit. And I'm going to tell you, I don't like debt personally. I don't like it in businesses, but I always say the best time to borrow money is when you don't need it.
Yep.
So go and set up these lines. And even if you have to pay 1 or 2% of the amount per year, to me, that's an insurance policy, because if you are strapped for cash, my experience has been with all types of businesses and myself, you lose focus on everything else. So have a source of go-to cash, which are these lines of credit. Even if you don't have a nickel out on it, it's not a bad idea to have those lines in case something comes up, in case there's a big case that needs funding, in case whatever. I firmly believe that. So I also want to have some cash reserves. 3-4 months is not a bad rule of thumb. That you probably can get others that say, hey, I don't keep anything. I can always put it back in. When you have law firms that are one partner and law firms that are, I'll say, 5 partners, you find some imbalances of what's going on in people's personal lives too, of how much money. So, that's where we, have the luxury, because we're one-on-one people, of digging deep and saying, okay, how do you guys want to do this? And you get partners to really sharing information, which is healthy. Not that we're trying to beat anybody up or anything, but getting them all on the same page. And by the way, the more partners in a firm, the harder it is to manage firms.
Yeah, I've always, my deal is, if you don't have a partner, don't get one. No, really, non-equity partners.
Yeah.
I mean, for a law firm, listen, what I found was some lawyers just, there's 2 things that motivate lawyers is their ego, which is they want their name on the deal. They want to be a partner, or either the money, or either both. And what I just really think it's, I'm not greedy. I don't mind sharing the money, but when you got to have a meeting to decide what temperature the office building is going to be and all that shit, that just drives me nuts. I mean, what I'm saying is, I just think it really slows down. I mean, I had this one firm I was consulting with, and they want a straight personal injury firm. They had some transactional, and so they were very committee. And it was like, I felt like I was in Congress. I felt like I was up there with the red tape.
Yeah, your feet get stuck in mud when that happens, and you can't move. I agree. We've worked with firms that have asked us, hey, what is a partner track for some of our team members? And we have to have a much deeper conversation about what's meant by partner, because sometimes an associate attorney, they want to be called a partner, but they don't want to sign on that line of credit. They don't want to. There are things that are not, readily known, if you will. We all watch Boston Legal and whatever these other shows are, and we think things are one way. They're generally not. So we talk about non-equity partnership. There can be sharing of profits. There can be a piece of what you earn. There can be lots of different ways to do things, and they're all individual for firms. And then there can be people who really do want to have people as equity partners because of X, Y, and Z. Those individual things. It goes into, and we're going to talk a little bit about this at the summit, succession planning. A single owner firm, well, let me say it the other way. A firm that has more than one owner, if something happens tragically to one or the other, there's a natural transition. If you're a single owner firm, that transition is not natural if something happens to that owner. And I have actually witnessed a couple of situations where tragic things happen, and all of a sudden those cases in law firms just scatter like cockroaches when you turn the light on. They go everywhere. They should have a plan. That single owner should have a plan, and we're going to hit on that at your summit. That's not necessarily buying and selling a law firm, but it's setting up for transition. And I think that's very important.
Yeah. So what's your take? We're about to run out of time, but I really want to get your take on this, on paying associates just straight commission.
If I had my druthers, I would absolutely pay producers on a commission basis.
What have you seen? Is it like between 17, 20%?
Yeah, well, I personally, again, like sliding scales, and it starts over every year. The more you bring in, the bigger piece of that pie you get to grab.
Gotcha.
So it can start at, any number, but I'm going to say, let's say it starts at 12% and goes up to 26, 27%. When you bring in the higher numbers, and then you're going to have some people, well, I don't have an opportunity to do that because the bigger cases are going here. Well, then you say, okay, here are the 10 things that you need to do, young associate, to be able to move up that chain. Are you going to try cases? Are you going to use experts? Are you going to, and you track these things. And what we've seen, Ken, is when you get the right people in the firm as these associates, they love it. They love it because they control their own destiny. They know the risk of having a firm where that guy is spending 7 figures on marketing and then has to employ, 50 people to deliver these services. Honey, that's a risk. And, there's some people more comfortable and some not. But if you can reward someone really well and have them not take, that risk, and you've got a good system of delivering that pipeline of new cases and that system to get those cases through the pipeline, it actually is a beautiful thing. So it doesn't happen every time, but it can happen.
I know. Well, what I've seen, the firms that have changed over, their associates fought them on it, but once they got into it, they loved it. Yeah. They made more money. The law firm owner made more money. Everybody was happier.
We all want some type of guarantee, but quite honestly, there's no guarantee in this life. Even if you've got a guaranteed salary, what if you're not at that firm tomorrow? You have a zero. So, I would prefer, and I think you're the type person that wants to have maybe not control of your destiny, but some influence on your destiny.
Right.
And when you have these commissions out there, then you have just that. It's up to you. It's what are you going to do with that? And I can start whistling the Star Spangled Banner. That's kind of the way this country works, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
It's up to us as owners and leaders to make that happen.
Listen, I could talk to you for 2 more hours, but we got to cut it short here. But listen, how can people? And I'm looking forward to see you in New Orleans we're filming this in about a month. But how can people get up with you if they want to ask you questions or talk to you or hire you?
Sure. I'll give you my email address is tmckey@vistact.com. That's vistact.com. Or my phone number is 225-931-7045. And I don't mind people calling. This is my passion, and if I'm available, I talk. And I want these firms to deliver higher quality services to their clients, and I hope and get them more clients, because you have to realize, all right, I think this, they're up against a behemoth insurance company in most cases.
Yeah.
And this group is the yin to that yang. Okay. Yeah. I think that if you've got to give people access to justice, and that's what the plaintiff bar does. And I think it's very, very honorable.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I agree. Well, listen, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And I look forward to seeing you in about 4 weeks.
Yep, I'll be there, sir. Thank you again, and I appreciate it.
All right. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.